Welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. Today's rant is going to be about to the last Ukrainian. Now, that's the war cry, the mantra that reflects the reality of the situation as it exists in terms of support provided by the United States, by NATO, by Europe to Ukraine, to the last Ukrainian. But nobody in the United States truly wants to embrace this. Nobody in Europe or NATO want to admit that this is what we're talking about. No, no, no. We are fighting this conflict in support of Ukrainian independence, in support of Ukrainian freedom, sovereignty, all of these notions that that the people of the United States and Europe hold near and dear to their heart, except they don't, because this conflict in Ukraine has nothing to do with sovereignty, with independence, with freedom. It has everything to do with the reality that this is a proxy conflict between the United States and Russia. None other than Secretary of State Marco Rubio has acknowledged this. He said that the conflict in Ukraine is a proxy war between the United States and Russia, where Ukraine is used as the proxy. The Secretary General of NATO has said the same thing, Martha Rutte. This is a proxy war between NATO and Russia. The Ukrainian defense minister has said that Ukraine is a proxy of NATO and the collective West in a conflict between the collective West and Russia. This is just the reality of it. Now, what is the goal and objective of the United States, of Europe, of NATO when it comes to this conflict? Again, it's not about sovereignty. They're not asking the Ukrainians to die to the last man over notions of Ukrainian independence or freedom. This is about achieving the strategic defeat of Russia. Now, there's different definitions of what strategic defeat of Russia could entail. In Europe, what we hear is that they want to humiliate the Russian army, humiliate, not defeat, humiliate the Russian army, so that Russia would never again consider engaging in the kind of actions that they have undertaken in Ukraine. I know. See, that promotes the NATO concept of this being an illegal war of aggression on the part of Russia. It ignores the fact that Russia intervened only after 8 years of Ukrainian Western lies about their intent to implement, peace plans in accordance with the Minsk Accords. That ignores the fact that the Ukrainian government had declared a war against the Russian speakers of eastern Ukraine, of Crimea. No, facts don't matter. This. We're not talking about reality here. We're talking about the fiction. And the fiction is that the West wants to defeat Russia. The West started this war. This war was started by the West, even years before the 2014 Maidan coup that brought in the current, nationalist Ukrainian government. The West was posturing to position Ukraine as a source of conflict with Russia for the goal of the strategic defeat of Russia. And that means not just humiliation of the Russian army on the battlefield, but the political demise of the Russian leadership, Vladimir Putin and his government, the collapse of the Russian economy, the collapse of Russian society, the dismemberment of Russia. This is what the West is trying to achieve to the last Ukrainian in this conflict. Now, the United States under Donald Trump may not have same shared outcomes. I believe it was the outcome that was desired by the former administration of Joe Biden. But Donald Trump seems to simply want Vladimir Putin to yield to Trump's demands. Trump doesn't care about Ukraine. He doesn't care about Ukrainian sovereignty, Ukrainian freedom, Ukrainian independence. What Donald Trump cares about is Donald Trump. He cares about being seen as the most powerful man in the world, the person who, when he says something has to happen, it happens. And Donald Trump has said that Russia must make territorial concessions, that Russia must not take a hard line on issues regarding demilitarization or denazification, that Russia, in short, must end this war on terms that are acceptable to Donald Trump, not necessarily Russia. So, here we have Donald Trump demanding that Vladimir Putin bend the knee, that Vladimir Putin yield, concede. And the Russians have responded by just ignoring Donald Trump's demands. And so now we have a situation where Donald Trump is throwing a temper tantrum. He had made a decision that one way to stop this conflict was to slow down the provision of military aid and financial aid to Ukraine, to um, demonstrate to Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian government that this war could not go on forever, that eventually they too would have to make certain compromises. But the Ukrainians have shown that they are unwilling to compromise, especially since they continue to be supported by NATO and Europe, who insist on this conflict going on to the last Ukrainian. Um, and as a result, Trump is in the middle. He's not willing to call out Zelensky, so he turns his ire on Vladimir Putin. And now it appears that Donald Trump is given permission for weapons to begin flowing back into Ukraine. Now, these weapons had been shut down under the orders of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who rightfully said that America no longer has weapons that it can give to Ukraine without digging into and compromising the national security of the United States. Our arsenal is empty. We have given Ukraine everything we can give. And whatever's left goes to Israel, who just finished fighting a 12-day war with Iran, in which a tremendous amount of very expensive weaponry was expended, weaponry that Ukraine needs as well. No, Donald Trump now has made a decision that this weaponry will once again flow to Ukraine. What we're talking about are Patriot missiles, primarily air defense systems. But it's not going to come from the United States. No, we're not emptying our arsenals. Instead, we're going to put political pressure on nations like Spain to give up a Patriot battery, pressure on Germany to give up Patriot battery, to put pressure on on nations that have purchased Patriot rockets, Patriot missiles, to allow these systems to be diverted instead of being delivered to them, to be diverted to Ukraine, so that Ukraine can, reconfigure its arsenal, replenish its arsenal, and continue to sustain the fight against Russia. Now, this isn't going to change into the battlefield realities. Nothing about the flow of these weapon systems to Ukraine, if and when it actually happens, is going to alter the fact that Russia has supremacy over the skies of Ukraine, and that its drones and missiles can hit any target in Ukraine anytime they want without any effective interdiction on the part of Ukraine. No, this is about political posturing. This is about Donald Trump being able to say he stood up to Vladimir Putin, to say that he didn't abandon the Ukrainians. This is about Donald Trump able to say anything except the truth, that all he's doing by providing these weapons to Ukraine is extending a war that Ukraine has already lost. All he's doing is guaranteeing that even more Ukrainian infrastructure will be destroyed, even more Ukrainians' lives will be lost. But see, Donald Trump can't come out and say that, because to do that, he would have to admit that what this conflict is really about is a willingness of the West to allow this war to go on until the last Ukrainian. So that's my rant. I'll be sure to make a new one the next time a thought crosses my mind. Until then, have a good day.